and welcome back for another one of our live streams. I'm really excited because today is just going to be sharing my journey. And in making the slides for this, let me make sure that you guys can see me really well. There we go. And in making the slides for this, it was really interesting for me to reflect back on all the different aspects of my journey. I think you'll be surprised by certain aspects of things. I think you will be enlightened by some of my opinions and perspectives. I plan on being as transparent as possible with a lot of my experience, and yeah, you'll just come along on the journey with me through entrepreneurship and the crazy wild ride that's been. Please let me know if you can hear me, you can see me. Just give me a hey, hello in the comments. That's just going to kind of help me know that I'm not talking to myself. At least I know I'm not, completely in a void. All right. With that said, welcomes aside, just keep this going. I plan on continuing every week offering free content that helps you to get from the next level. And you'll see why in a lot of my journey. I've realized why I've come to do so much of this stuff. But subscribe, turn on the notifications if you can, if you're watching on YouTube. If you're on LinkedIn, connect with me and comment no matter where you are, watching on LinkedIn, watching in on YouTube. Or if you're in the Myo community, you got the link from the Myo community and you're on YouTube now, hit up those comments, okay? Everything helps. It all helps to just increase the visibility. We can help as many people as possible because that is really the foundation, I should say, of my story. So let's get into it. It is a journey. It has been an absolute wild ride being an entrepreneur at this moment and stage in my life. And for the past, I don't know, a couple of years, I guess I've been 100% an entrepreneur. I have not worked really for anybody else in a very long time. And it is full of all of these highs and lows. There's so many times where I feel great. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never made this much money, or I've never felt this good about work that I put out into the world, or plenty of times where I'm like, oh my God, I have no idea how I'm going to put food on the table this month. Or, oh my God, I don't know what is going to happen if I might lose my house. Like, we are high and super high, and then low and super low. And there is nothing quite like being an entrepreneur because those highs are really high, but those lows get really low. And so just hang on for the ride because we're going to go and explore through all of it. I'm going to be very transparent. There's going to be people who might watch this who may have been at certain parts of my journey and might be surprised of how I regard them now. If you were a part of my journey in any way, shape, or form, you should probably stop watching here. But if you do continue on, just know I'm going to be as honest as possible with my perspectives. I am at a point in stage of my life where I'm mature enough to realize that I can appreciate perspectives, and that I have a perspective and other people have a perspective, and both are valid. And so let's see how it works out. But it's nothing but love the whole way through. I'm just going to share my journey from my perspective in the most authentic way I can possibly. Okay, so this is me, wonderful hygienist, super happy. I was in, I don't know if you can even tell, but this is a 4-op room, right? So I started out, very first job out of hygiene school, in a group practice. So in this big group practice, now it was a baby DSO, like it wasn't a mature, what we know to be a DSO right now. It was big on, like, I think we took a lot of Medicaid, and I don't know, we had a lot going on. So there were multiple hygienists. I was probably one of 5. There were specialists galore. There were general dentists, so several general dentists. There were 2 in this op with me, and then another hygienist on the opposite side of my op. And so there were 4 of us on that side. We typically got paired together. So I was paired with a GP and several GPs, actually, because, the turn and the turnover in corporate dentistry is very real. So I was paired with a GP, and so that would be my doc that I would get all my exams from. But we had a lot of other opportunities to work with other people. So the oral surgeon that was in the office, we could collaborate with in certain aspects. I would collaborate oftentimes with the orthodontist. She actually messaged me the other day. I love her. I'm supposed to message her back. My life is crazy hectic, and I will reach out to you soon if you're watching this. But I love her, absolutely phenomenal. She'll be like, I have a person who needs a cleaning. Can you fit them in? Absolutely. I am a people pleaser at my very, very core. The heart and soul of me is like, always say yes. If you say no, you're letting people down. If you let people down, you're a failure. If you're a failure, you might as well just like give up on life right now. Like, what are you even doing? Right? So it'd be like, absolutely, I'll fit them in. And that was always my nature. And that's how I've been as a hygienist. And a lot of people love me for it. But I have to tell you, it did me a great disservice, I think, at the end, because, you know, I think I wore myself out a lot faster and came to burnout a lot faster as a result of it. But neither here nor there. One of the people who would always come over and ask if I could fit somebody in or just squeeze somebody into my already very busy, very packed schedule that was cutting shorter and shorter my appointments was a pediatric dentist. And we had multiple of them on site. And one of the pediatric dentists really took to me because I really would, yes, of course, I can see your patient. There's no reason why I shouldn't be able to fit in your 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old. Like, we could just do a prophy really quick. I'll just hit that up in between appointments and stay late over lunch. Sure. While I am being this receptive, she's doing treatments in her side that are airway friendly. She's super airway focused. At this point in time, she's already doing ALF. Our corporate wasn't like super excited about airway and weren't 100% on board, but it wasn't like it was something that was like, no, don't do it. Absolutely not whatsoever. It was more of a, yeah, you could do it, but like, we're not advertising airway. Okay. So I have 3 children at this point in time, and very shortly after this picture is taken, or maybe a little bit while it was taken, I got pregnant. So yay, I'm expecting. So I have 3 children already, and my son at this point, I already know because he's had PAN, he's been like fully worked up because, you know, in hygiene school, I already had my pedo cases like checked off. It was all those other cases I had a difficulty finding. But I had my pedo cases checked off. You know, my kids would go get cleanings. They got x-rays. We did all the things, right? So I already know at this point that he is congenitally missing 5 teeth, right? So he's got 1 through 16 up top. He is missing his wisdoms and his second molars. He is missing his wisdoms and his first molars. I want to say he was missing his wisdom, and he's missing molars and wisdoms, second molars, and 23. Okay. So he's missing teeth congenitally. I'm trying to figure out what's the next step. I've been talking to the orthodontist at this point. He is 10 when I have this baby. So maybe he's 9 years old at the time that I'm taking this picture. So I'm talking to the orthodontist, and I'm like, well, is this going to be like a braces thing in the future? Do I need to talk to the prosthodontist? Like, do I need to talk to the oral surgeon? Like, what are we going to do about this? They're telling me all sorts of different things and all sorts of different treatment plans. This pediatric dentist is like, don't do any of that. Don't do any of that. Like, do none of it. Here's what you need. You need an ALF. You got to get them expanded up top. And then on the bottom, we can do some work there, make sure that that gets expanded too. And then from there, we can put in spacers and like keep the space and have it retained until he's about 18 and ready to get, you know, implants and so forth. And then you can do all that. But get as much space in his mouth as you can now, because if you don't wind up with extractions later, or somebody's going to want to extract and push forward things, and you don't want any of that. So that's when I started to become very curious about airway. And I'm like, this is wild. Like I have 3 doctors, you know, a cosmetic dentist, an orthodontist, and a oral surgeon giving me one cohesive treatment plan for my child. That's like, this is what we're going to do. These are going to have to be the steps. You're going to have to work with all of us in order to get that to happen. And we can treatment plan and sequentially see him between now and that stage. And all of that would be for aesthetics. Like we can aesthetically make it so it's good, and functionally, because why does he have 1 through 16 up top? Granted, they're not all erupted, right? But we could see everything. We could see all the buds. And he's 20 years old as of today, the day that I'm recording, and he's 1 through 16. So they all erupted, okay? So why would he have a full dentition up top and not have the opposing molars in the bottom for the bottom? Like that's going to lead to super eruption. Like we're going to have all sorts of problems. So here's what we have to do, and do, and like immediately. But we had different types of problems and issues. And so that all got put to the side. So airway is pretty interesting, but I'm not yet there. As we continue having a relationship for the like 2 years or so that I worked here, as we continue having a relationship, at some point she leaves the practice, but she's like, you really got to get into this airway thing. I think you would be really great at it. I have this phenomenal myofunctional therapist that I work with. You could even get into it like hygienists do myofunctional therapy. It would be like fantastic for you. I think you'd be perfect for it. You've got like the arch shape. You've got like the whole facial function thing going for you just naturally. I think you'd be fantastic for it. So I look up myofunctional therapy. I'm like, what is she talking about? Why is she speaking in tongues? And like, I don't understand a word she's saying. Well, she wasn't speaking in tongues. Myofunctional therapy, I came to find out, is a real thing. And I landed on the IAOM. And I'm looking at their website and it's 2014. And I'm like, it's $2,500? Are you kidding me? Like, who can afford that? I'm never going to do that. That is wild. I don't even know what that is. Like, why would I spend that much money on a course? I don't even understand what it is and what it does. Okay, got you. Pediatric dentist understands entirely what's happening here, okay? I'm about to have a baby. I am totally clueless. Like, to be young and to be back into that mindset again, where she's like, no, she just needs the education of it. So we went to several different courses and I attended things with her. And like I've heard Scott Siegel speak twice before I ever took a myofunctional therapy course. I had phenomenal conversations with Joy Moeller about perio and the connection. And like as a full-time dental hygienist at that point, I'm thinking perio is connected to this. Is mind-blowing. This is absolutely phenomenal. Like I remember that conversation like nothing else with Joy Moeller. It was absolutely mind-blowing. I heard Michelle Emanuel speak several times. There's so many people I got to hear from. Paula Fabi was in her practice. I was just mind blown by the wealth of people that I was exposed to by just going to learn, but none of that ever clicked in. And I wish I could go back to those days and to fix everything. Granted, where I'm at now is not bad, but I wish I'd started a little earlier, because then I had this baby and she had a pacifier and we breastfed and she was tongue-tied. I had no idea that she was tongue-tied, but we had mastitis, and the mastitis, the most painful thing in the entire world. I've had 4 children. This baby's the only one that was a C-section. That was an emergency C-section. Like we almost lost her, and it like breaks my little heart every time I think about it. But I had 3 natural births, 2 without any epidural, without any sort of pain medication. I would do that 20 times over before I would ever breastfeed with mastitis ever again in my life. It was the most painful, torturous thing. And I don't think if you had told me that she had a tongue tie, I would have even believed you, because it wasn't for me true ankylossia. Like we were struggling through breastfeeding. We were struggling with certain things like sleep. She was all about that pacifier. You can kind of see her teeth in this picture. Her mouth always open. She is like a total or oral myofunctional disordered baby, and I had no idea, none at all at the time. Even though I had all of the education up here, even though I had the access to Paula Fabi, even though all of this is there, it just didn't click. It did not click. And it wasn't even just the baby. So I'm kind of starting to realize a little bit when I take a look at my family, right? So not the super most awesome best pictures of us, but I'm also a very much like I'm in the moment person. And so if we're taking pictures, it's probably because my husband wants to take pictures, or like I've stopped for a second to say, okay, let's take a picture because I don't have any. So these pictures are just what we have. Okay, this is what we're working with. So just deal with me and the sloppiness that is these photos. But my little family, I have my son. He's the oldest. He's been disappointed every time I've gotten pregnant since because he has 3 little sisters. He loves them, but he wishes 1 or 2 of them may have been boys. They are the girliest girls you will ever meet. The oldest, let's start with my son before we get to the girls. Let's start with my son. He had every sort of ADHD thing that you could kind of pick out from under the sun. So he was struggling a lot with his behavior and emotional, like impulse control. If you told him something that he didn't like, he was swinging. He was very rambunctious, hyperactive. He couldn't sit still. It would always be like he's bouncing or he's doing something, like he's stimming. These things that I can identify now, I had no idea what was going on then. I remember kindergarten is where it started. His kindergarten teacher told me that, look, he would not pay attention. He could not focus. So he would stare at the sun. In the sun, you could see with the rays through a window, you could see the little dust that's floating, little dust particles. You could see them. We call them sun fuzzies because that's what they call them on Nihao Kai Land. And clearly with 4 children at that time, Nick Jr., we were watching that a lot. So they called it sun fuzzies. We called it sun fuzzies. So he would take a sun fuzzy that he finds with his eyes, and he's following it the whole way down on its slow journey down to the ground. And then he might pick another one, but he could not focus in circle time. They'd be trying to read a book, trying to do an activity together, and he was just out, like did not have any care at all for what they were doing in kindergarten. And I'm like, okay, lady, but he's 5. There's no 5-year-old that wants to sit down in a structured setting for circle time and read a book. Like they don't want to do that. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. I'm reading to him like he gets books at home. You're still getting the story, I guess, a little bit like through some sort of infusion, maybe. He's getting it. But that's neither here nor there. Let's get through his whole section. So he at first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, we had the same thing said again and again and again and again and again. And my poor child, like I just ignored them. I just figured, he's 5, he's 6, he's 7, he's 8, he's 9. Like he just is not interested in school. And that's okay because school's not for everyone. But that's not okay because by the time he hit 5th grade, it was like he's probably not going to make it through 5th grade if you don't do something. I was working with that pediatric dentist at that time. She left. She started her own practice. She was like, you really have to get into talking about airway and you really have to like legitimately be invested if you're going to be my hygienist. And I said, okay, I'm going to invest. Now, investment for her meant that she was going to periodically do CE courses, and I'm welcome to come with her and, we can learn that way. But if I wanted to become a myofunctional therapist and go down that journey and that road, I need to invest in myself and do that program myself. Okay. So, all right. I'm with her in her practice. My son is scheduled. He has an appointment to go see the top pediatric neurologist in New Jersey because I had really great insurance. My husband had a phenomenal job. We had really great insurance. We got to see, let me not go there yet. We had really great insurance. So top pediatric neurologist in New Jersey. And that appointment was like 6 to 8 months out. All this time I'm learning about things, but the ADHD portion of it, I don't think got to me as of yet. I'm thinking about breathing. I'm thinking about crowded teeth. Like he didn't have those problems. So what we were talking about when he was 9, as far as like these treatment plans, orthodontics and, oral surgery and chaining teeth and doing all this stuff, we never actually had those issues. Those issues wound up, he grew with a very wide arch, like 1 through 16 all fit in beautifully, kind of in the similar way that I have all 32, and they fit in just gorgeously into my arch. His arch grew very wide, his maxillary arch. The mandible grew too, but because there's so much missing, he's got a lot of spacing down on the bottom. And so that needed to be addressed in a different type of manner. So I'm not looking at him as like what I see as narrow, crowded arches or kids with tongue ties. Like he very explicitly did not have a tongue tie. My oldest 2 did not in any capacity. My youngest 2 both tied, what we would call mid-tongue restrictions now, or posterior tongue ties. They were less obvious to the eyes, but my oldest 2 didn't have that. So like I would never associate that in my mind. Right? So we get to the pediatric neurologist. Pediatric neurologist asks us a list of questions. Does he da-da-da? Does he da? Does he that? Does he that? There's not one question on there about sleep. Remember that point because that's coming back later. Not one. Okay. All right. He has ADHD. I'm going to give him medication. He should be able to focus and he'll make it through school. 1.5 years of medication. It really didn't do much. It didn't do anything at all. We went through 3 different types of medication and we still had the same focus and attention issues and he was still kind of jittery and whatever. We still had the same problems. My daughter, my oldest daughter, she had every sleep issue under the sun. If you name it, we've had it at least once, if not multiple times, but night terrors were a big thing. Blood-curdling screams in the middle of the night, bedwetting every single night, all the way through to age 10, like every single night. It didn't matter what we did. We're like 4 hours before bed, no drinks. Like you can't have anything. You're wetting the bed all the time. And it didn't matter. It was still going to happen, okay? I know why now, but I didn't know why then. And when I went to talk to the pediatrician about her sleepwalking, the night terrors, the snoring, the falling out the bed, all this stuff, when we went to go talk to the pediatrician about it, she's like, don't worry, she won't be 15 and still doing that. And I distinctly remember that response as like, that's weird. Okay, I get it. She won't be 15 and still doing that, but like she's 8 now. Is there something we can do between 8 and 15? Like, is there something there? So it was like they'll grow out of it type of thing. All right, I didn't like that response. And to be fairly honest, once I started getting into myo and airway, the sleep physician that I went to go see, who was equally phenomenal and very aware of airway and all that stuff, also said, well, she might grow out a bit. And I'll tell you about our sleep study if I remember later, because it comes back around, okay? The youngest 2, breastfeeding issues, all the upper respiratory issues and congestion that you can imagine, mouth breathers, like they are what made it super obvious for me, to the point that I took the 3rd child, so this one, over to Paula Fabi to get evaluated because I knew she had a tongue tie, which means she had to start myo, which means she had to work with Paula, and that meant she needed a comprehensive evaluation, and that was a 2-hour appointment. So we scheduled for our 2-hour appointment with Paula, and I take her, and she spends maybe 10 minutes with her. She looks at her, and she's like, this child can't breathe. What do you mean this child can't breathe? Like, I'm her mother. I look at her all the time. We literally have the same profession. You're a hygienist. I'm a hygienist. What do you mean my child can't breathe? Now, it wasn't that aggressive at first, but like my thoughts immediately went to like, what are you talking about? She can't breathe. CBCT, we then take immediately after, because this is, again, in the office that I work with. So it's like, well, hey, can we go take the CBCT? So we go take the CBCT. she can't breathe. Her whole upper airway, it's filled, it's like inflamed. You could see like there's where is she breathing from? It can't be her nose. There's nothing there that would indicate patency for her nose in any capacity. The adenoids look huge. Her tonsils look huge. Like, what's happening with this child? She really can't breathe. Well, how did Paula know that? How was she able to look at her and identify that? And I look at her every single day as her mother, and I can't identify that. I call myself an airway hygienist, and I tell my patients all the time, like, what's going on with their kids. I can't see it at home. This is wild. Immediately, tears. I feel like an absolute failure. I failed my child. I failed as a parent. I failed just as a wife. Like, what am I doing? I get messed up our kid, and I shouldn't have. Like, if anybody's to know what's going on, it should have been me. And that's what got me down the rabbit hole. It wasn't all the education. It wasn't listening to Scott. It wasn't listening to Michelle Emanuel. It wasn't listening to Joy Moeller in our conversation. It wasn't listening to any of that. It was hearing that my child couldn't breathe, and I had no way of identifying it. And that was the hard part for me. So now I'm in the rabbit hole. Okay. Now they're like, you need to go take her to an ENT. We went to an ENT, went to go see Stephen Park. Stephen Park did a phenomenal job of just talking to me and listening to me, scoping her. He scoped her. She hated every minute of it. I tell parents about this all the time. I don't care that your child's not going to like it. You shouldn't care that your child's not going to like it. You need that data. Because if you look at my children, if you look at her before somebody told me that she can't breathe, you'll see this big broad nose. You'll see this arch that does not look like it's crowded because it wasn't at that time, okay? You will see this child with her facial shape and you'll be like, she can breathe. There's no reason why she can't breathe. Her nostrils are not narrow. Like, there's no reason why she shouldn't be able to breathe through her nose. But then you get a scope up there and she only had 10% of the room in her nostrils to inspire or expire air. So fully occluded nostril, the adenoids and deviated septum, fully occluded one nostril, adenoids, 90% occlusion of the other nostril. Can't even get the scope all the way up there. Like, once we hit adenoid town, nothing. Can't get through. 10% volume she's got through her nose for respiration. The mouth, tonsils are inflamed, as they always were. It was chronic sore throats and ear throats for this child. So if we weren't on antibiotics, it was like a random day because we were always on antibiotics. So she couldn't breathe. So you have to get these kids scoped. After having that talk, I was like, I need to take a course. I need to take a myofunctional therapy course. And that's exactly what I did. But I had no money, okay? I had no money. So I want to do this. I want to have a course. I have no money. How am I going to do this? I need to help my children because I can't afford Polyphaby for 4 kids that need it, okay? I need to figure out what I'm going to do. So we took out a loan. I did a loan for my first course, and I signed up for a Sandra Coulson course because Sandra Coulson was still with the IOM, and I was going to take an IOM course and then get certified. But then Sandra Coulson left the IOM and refunded the money. And I was like, what am I going to do? Wind up taking the next course that was available in New Jersey, and that was with Sandra Holtzman. And what a blessing, Sandra Holtzman and Becky. What a blessing. They are phenomenal. Now, if I didn't mention at all, I always seem to tend to want to do the most because at that point in time, I was also running for governor of New Jersey and then subsequently ran under the Libertarian banner for lieutenant governor of New Jersey at the same time. So I had to leave my intro course early on one of the days because I had to attend a debate that was going on in Newark, New Jersey. And it's the wildest story. And it's all that like Karen Masters can ever think of is the fact that like I had to leave that course early to go attend the debate. Course. I take the course and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I don't know how I lucked out. I was able to sit next to Angie Lehman. I had Zahara Nguyen sitting in front of me, and she's just absolutely fabulous for all of who she is. And Brittany was in that class too. Brittany, Sierra, Elise Shockey. We had a fabulous group, a really fabulous group at that point in time. And it was just like such a great thing. And all I can think about while I'm there is I've got to have this great logo. So as soon as I get out of here, I got to see if the MyoSpot is available, the myospot.com. I need that domain. If I don't have that domain, I don't know what's going to happen. But I need that domain. And then in the O for the MYO, like MYO, in that O, it was going to be for my logo. It was going to be in the O, we would have a tongue and it's like up, as if it's up on spot. And so it's going to be the MyoSpot with like a tongue up there. And it's going to be super cool. It's going to be the best. I got home, of course, the myospot.com was available. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. I got the website, I saved the domain and I started working on like what this was going to look like. I'm a very creative person. I've come to learn in all that I've done, in just everything, in all that I've done, even when it came down to politics and trying to be in politics and like writing my own speeches or like writing things and marketing and so forth. I'm very creative. I can come up with things, but this logo thing was like a bizarre thing that I just couldn't come up with. So I had all the written content, like what I wanted on the website, and I just had everything. And I was telling somebody just yesterday what was my ideals. Like I came out of the course and I'm telling my husband, Harvey, I'm like, we're going to charge XYZ for evaluations and then XYZ per appointment. Everybody's going to be like so excited about this. Like I work in pediatrics. All these people, they're going to understand like that they need the myofunctional therapy and that I'm going to be able to do it. And my doctor's on board and she wants me to do it. So we'll have the MyoSpot and we'll set up the LLC and we'll do this and we'll do that and da 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 da. And at the end of that course, I had a conversation with Sandra Holtzman and she's like, well, who paid for the course? Did you do it or did your doctor to pay for it? And I said, I paid for it. And she said, okay, good. Make sure you own your education. Don't let, anybody else own it for you. I was like, oh, okay. This is good. Keep that in mind. Well, I've got all these big dreams, but reality check, I come out of the course and my doctor's like, oh, no. You're not having your own thing. We already have that. It's Paula. Paula's there. She has her own thing. She comes in, goes, here and there. I want something in office. I've already got an LLC. I've already got a space designated. I've already got this put together. All we need now is for you to work in it. And so you'll be the myofunctional therapist for this company I've already set up. And like all these things are already put into place. Let's put together the supply list. Let's put together this, that, and the next. And like, yay. Oh, well, this isn't what I imagined it was going to be. And this is the exact opposite of what Sandra Holtzman told me I should do. And I kind of already bought the domain for the MyoSpot and started working on the website. And like, okay, I'm a people pleaser. Fine. I'll just do both because why shouldn't I be able to do both? Let's just do the absolute most. I can work on growing the MyoSpot while I'm working here in this beautiful space. So this was the office that I was working in for myofunctional therapy. On the other side of this is a 2-chair operatory, open bay operatory that I saw hygiene patients for in this pediatric office, right? You come through this door here that you can kind of see partially. You come through this door and in the door, you're going to be able to enter this new world, right? Where it's all super colorful and there's all sorts of things. Now, I forgot to mention that same like period of time where I did my first myo course, I then did Lois Laney's restorative breathing. I then did voice gym with the Tri-State Study Club, New Jersey Tri-State Study Club. And wow, I had so much information. There were so many things to implement. So for me, myo was always like up and engaged. When we were eating, we could sit down, we'll sit down at the little table and do that. But these chairs were not for myo. These chairs here were not for myo. We're going to be up, We're going to be on our Naboso board, getting our sensory perception engaged. We would be on the balls. There would be bouncing. I would whip out the mat if we needed a softer area to kind of to stand and to move and to play and so forth. We would do upside down reading. There were squishies everywhere so that they get tactile sensory perception engaged. Like, we were doing all sorts of things. It was just a phenomenal thing. I don't even know if anybody realizes there's like a yoga block and a squishmallow here. Like, I don't know what you think Myo looks like, but for me, from day one, it never looked like what everybody else's Myo looks like. Like, I need all the tools in order to be able to do this. We can't do this in an office setting. But it was absolutely fabulous to have this, because the exact opposite was going on at home. So I was still working full-time hygiene. I was still making hygiene wages. I would clock out at that company. I would clock in at this company, and it's the same building. It's my same name. It's my same employer technically, but different companies. So I had a different title now, a different role. We designated very separately the RDH and OMT thing early, okay? There were times where I would see people during my lunch, or what was supposed to be my lunch. Like, I was doing Myo at all odd hours of the day, because ALF, HAGA, Healthy Start, like all these things were going on over there, expansion, all these things were going on in the dental side. And so we had a lot of people. I was able to work with people very early on and get people excited and invigorated about Myo. It just didn't translate to me as a business person, because I would have to work and do all this networking at nighttime. So if I'm working from 9 to 5 doing pediatric hygiene, then from 5 to 7, I'm here doing Myo. Then 7 to 8, I would do mobile myofunctional therapy or networking. And so the Myo spot had evening appointments available. And those evening appointments, like 7:15, I can come to your house for an evaluation, or 7:30, I can come to your house and we can do our sessions or whatever. Like, I was doing that. And it was very, very difficult, okay? I had to build up 2 businesses all at the same time, all of the intellectual property back then. I don't know what people are doing now. Back then, and I can only speak for what I know to be happening for my courses and stuff that I've taught. But back then, you took a course, you got all of your basics, all of your information, and then from there, it was just, you're on your own. So here's maybe a template of something, here's maybe what you should use as, your evaluation. But I didn't like any of that. So I had to create my own. I had to create my own registration paperwork, my own informed consent. I wrote my own informed consent. Okay. Had to write that all up. I had to create my visuals. I had to create what this looked like. I had to source supplies. I had to do all of the things and figure it out all on my own. And not for one company, for 2. Okay. This is all while I'm networking. And so, it's just like, well, I don't know what to do. The only thing I know to do is just to do the absolute most. Like, thank God we didn't get elected, because if we had gotten elected, I wouldn't have had time to do any of this. So I'm doing Myo and I'm networking and I'm meeting all these different doctors that are doing different treatments. And at that same time, I'm being presented with a contract with the doctor who I work for, who got me into this, who is like the person I credit entirely to my career and I have the utmost respect for, and I still refer people to, but presents me with this contract and exclusivity, and I can't work within such and such a range with anybody else, and yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, this doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel right, because I'm having these great relationships with these other people, and then this is coming up, and I wasn't even making money. At this point, I'm just bleeding money. So yes, I'm making my hygiene wages doing the Myo, and I'm making my hygiene wages doing full-time hygiene. But I'm also spending a lot of money trying to network, trying to get my name out there, building up my website, trying to figure out how I can get people to the website. I'm writing blog posts. I'm getting a little bit of traction on Pinterest. I'm trying to post things onto social media. Social media has never been my jam, but I will tell you what, there's nobody who does social media or did social media like I did it back then. If I was doing it now the way I was doing it back then, I would have gotten a lot more followers early on, because I'm much more capable. I know a lot more now. I read a lot more now. I research a lot more now. I've invested in so many different things that I know how to work the system if I need to. But I'm pushing the MyoSpot. Okay. I created all of these wonderful assets. So I created for myself a wonderful coupon, a brochure, a rack card. My rack card. Oh, I wish I had one. Why don't I have one? I would love to show you what the back of this rack card looks like. It's bright orange. So orange, I think, is the most like grabbing color. If you're not grabbed right now by the fact that there's orange all throughout this presentation, then I don't know what to say. But orange is going to grab you. And so it's like orange, and it talks all about Myo. It's a wonderful letter that I wrote, the 5 whys of who, what, where, when, why, for why would you even want to work with me in this thing. A lot of times you get things in the mail, and for a dental office, because I've seen it happen. I've worked in dentistry long enough that I've seen it happen. They get mail and it goes right in the trash, right? But you have to have something that kind of engages them. So I paid extra for full color print on the back of my envelopes. That way, if our gatekeeper was going to open up my envelope, I sent out over 100 of these, y'all, over 100 of these to try to network with people all throughout New Jersey that did anything remotely related to orthodontics, tongue ties. And there weren't a lot of people at that time. I'm talking, this is 2017, 2018. Anybody doing tongue ties, anybody doing anything that seemed remotely holistic dentistry, that seemed remotely like it might work with what I was doing, I sent them out. Over 100 of these. I probably got 3 or 4 people that actually like responded, and it just wasn't the most successful campaign, despite the high levels of creativity and effort and work that went into this. So I'll tell you, for right now, I feel like this industry, the way it is, it celebrates like grand levels of mediocrity. Okay. And I don't think I've said that. Maybe I did say it before publicly, but I don't think I get to say that very often, but it celebrates grand levels of mediocrity. Like everything I was doing it big, on the biggest, highest level that I could do. And it just seemed like there was just this willful ignorance of all the stuff that was going on. And I'm trying to tell other people how you could do this kind of stuff. And I think that's the kind of stuff that wasn't appreciated back then. It is much more appreciated now. Like the fact that we've got nearly 40 lives under our belts. High five to us. We are fantastic as a team. That you're appreciative of like all these random tips and things that you can gain from what I've experienced. What I will say though is that a lot of people opened it. So I may not have gotten a lot of response because it was always about, hey, I would love to come and do a lunch and learn and tell you about it and whatever. And here's a coupon for $100 off one patient that you refer. And $100 was a lot because I was not charging. I was charging like pennies. I was under $100 a visit. So this was like, I owe you $5 if you work with me, something like that, right? So the important part here for tracking is that I had a special area of my website that was just for providers, and it has education and research and all sorts of things, and even a free screening assessment there. And so I put the link there. Just visit the myospot.com/for providers to learn more about da, 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 da. There's even a free screening and assessment and whatever, yada, yada, yada. A lot of people went there. That's how I was able to track, because there was no other reason for you to wind up on that page. It's not in my menu. Like there's no reason for you to happen upon for providers other than you've been sent there because you opened up. So a lot of people opened it. And what I find today to be absolutely true is that most people are not interested in myofunctional therapy. So yes, I sent it out to over 100 people, but probably there's only about 3 that would have ever done anything with it and gone any further to like refer patients. Okay. So a lot of money expensed on this marketing, cold marketing campaign. I also did a lot of cold marketing to pediatric offices office is, like walking in, having a lot and things to kind of get people engaged, giving away my business cards, lots of flyers and education and information before. Also to a very like womp womp size response. Okay. But it worked in some places. It worked really well. I had a couple of offices that worked with me, would refer, and I did a couple of lunch and learns, and one relationship went really well, and she's still today my favorite release provider in the state of New Jersey. But she was all about having me on board. She was like, you are absolutely phenomenal. We happened upon each other, and so how you work matters. And all of my documents and everything that I do, like I say, I do it to the highest level. I'm not about mediocrity in any way, shape, or form. And so just in having one of her patients who was working with her, but then found the myo spot for pre-frenectomy care, it was in the paperwork that I had remitted back to her about them. It was in the documentation that I gave them in preparation for this release. It was in seeing how I work that she was like, this is great. I'm working with a bunch of people and they're all in different professions, speech language pathologists, but like, I like the way you work. Like, this is high quality, high care stuff. Can you come into my office? Can you work every Tuesday from XYZ time to XYZ time and do just post-op with me and the babies, because there's nobody that's helping these babies. Absolutely. Absolutely, I can do that. There's not enough people doing that. So we would do some pre-op where anytime there was a baby, hey, call Carice. You need to see Carice before you get to me, because you need that clinical or tactile, you need to start doing that first. So we started doing that. And that was a phenomenal arrangement because I was paid a myofunctional therapist for those couple of hours a week that I was there every week. And it was such a beautiful relationship. I love her so very much. You know, Corona came, the COVID pandemic, everything happened, and it just shut all that off. And so we weren't releasing babies. Nobody was even seeing babies. People were keeping their babies behind walls. Like, we weren't having any of that anymore. And that kind of fizzled out. But with, you know, Corona, with everything, I skipped something. And I love that I put this here to remind me. So Kanye West, All Falls Down. Really great lyric. We're living the American dream. The people highest up got the lowest self-esteem. The prettiest people do the ugliest things. On the road to riches and diamond rings. Phenomenal lines and lyrics. It really resonated with me as I was coming up with this, because in 2018 or 2019, I'm not remembering now, but that's fine. It's neither here nor there. Before COVID, before all of that nonsense, I had the lowest of the low points in my career as a myofunctional therapist when there was a board complaint filed against me for doing myofunctional therapy, for working with babies, for having that on my website that I was working with babies. Now, we're not doing exercises. We're not doing exercises in any capacity, but what we are doing is like preoperative care. You've got to get in there. You have to know how to work. My frenectomy instructions were top tier. I have yet to see anybody else who has frenectomy instructions that were so explicit and so wonderfully explained and like really got into the nitty gritty of like how you really do this. But that website, having my instructions there, saying that I work with babies as a myofunctional therapist, like that all went straight down the toilet. Everything went as far fast down the toilet as it could. My doctor was getting phone calls about different random things that I had posted, just asking if anybody else was having these kind of experiences in the OMT for the RDH group. And then I left that group, the group that I was part of the reason why it even exists. I left the group for about a year and a half before coming back. But it was a very low point. It really strained the relationship between me and that doctor, which was very unfortunate. I wound up leaving that office, going to just work in general dentistry, back in corporate dentistry again. And it was a blessing and a curse, because I think all things happen in time and for a reason, but I really was not meant for dentistry anymore. I knew too much about airway, and then corporate dentistry is too restrictive. Like, I just could not do that. But to have SLPs across the state, like 10 of them, and most of them, these are people you sat next to at lectures, people who you've laughed with, people who you've shared your story of your child with, people who your provider treats their children. And so you see them in office and you have wonderful conversations with them. And these are the people who are signing documents to file a board complaint against you. And it felt like the people highest up got the lowest self-esteem, where it was like, you could talk to me. It's not like you guys didn't know me, but you were all following one or two ridiculous people who really have the low other people. And it was really a negative low point where I had to consider, do I even want to do this? And in my point of struggle and frustration, I found out that the IAOM knew about the fact that this board complaint was going to happen, because the person who was going to do it, Robin Merkel Walsh, who was going to do it, told them. She told them. They did nothing. Awesome, wonderful. I pay association dues. I'm in the middle of filing for my comp. At that point in time, my exam was due. I had finished the exam. I spent 6 months on the exam. I had finished it, just trying to make sure that it was perfect before I sent it in. It was due by the end of that month. I'm like, forget this. There's no point of protection. They don't have any legislative help. They're not going to offer me any legal anything. They're not going to do anything to stop this. I have to do it. I have to hire my own lawyer. I have to do my own thing and like whatever. So that for me was the end of like, well, certifications BS. Because if I'm in the middle of your process, I've taken your course, if I've given you money, and all you have for me is like, yeah, we knew this was going to happen, but we can't really do anything. That for me was like, well, this whole situation is not what it should have been. And this whole situation is garbage. And so where I'm pulling away from the system, the doctor I was working with who got me into all of this, the pediatric dentist, she just was like, no, we need to just conform more. Okay. We need to remain members of the organization. I'm like, no. They're going to see me. I'm going to grow. I'm going to get bigger. And I'm going to remind everybody that they're not for the people. And that's exactly what I've come to do years later. But it also led to more beautiful things, like me wanting to publish a book, me wanting to write more, to get more public awareness, because organizations weren't looking for that. Organizations that were out at that time were selling courses to professionals. They were busy making money, not busy making public aware. I started doing podcasts. I started getting myself out there. Now, during all of this, then we had the COVID pandemic literally right after I had published Accomplish. Accomplish was February 2020. We had the pandemic that happened. In the middle of the pandemic, things just started going down the drain with business, and it was not looking very good. Just like most of the world, it was just not looking very good for me in business. And here's where I have this book accomplished. I have somebody who reached out to me at that time about working together to form something, and let's teach. And I wasn't totally about teaching, but I was like, you know what? If I am going to teach, I'm going to teach to make a difference, because I don't like the way that I was taught and kind of left out to dry. So that's no fault to any of the people who taught, because that's what was at the time. But it was like, yeah, I'm only like I'm only a little over 2 years in at the time where we decided to do this course. But if I'm going to do this course, I'm going to do this course like full-fledged. We're going to give as much as possible. People need to understand the business aspect of things. It can't just be, here's the Myo and then good luck. It has to be more than that. It can't just be, here's the Myo, you don't need anything else. Myo is going to, fix all the problems of the world. It has to be more than that. So I offered more than that. We offered more than that. And eventually, what you knew as Team Myo became a AHS Team Myo. I question a lot today in this moment in time and where I am now, how much of a difference I was able to make, because there was still so many restrictions in that. And so I'm paving a new path with my pathway to be significantly more impactful than I thought I was there. Here's where true impact comes, though. The IAH, the International Association of Airway Hygienists, I've always had the blessing of being very well connected in this industry with hygienists, and some are SLPs that are super notable and absolutely fabulous, who I am absolutely obsessed with. But the RDHs, and when I came to like Shannon and when I came to Shannon, Adele, like I came to people about this, so many people, a lot of people I came to about it. Some of the people were like, absolutely not, we want nothing to do with this. I was like, we need our own association. We can't have an association that's with the SLPs. We can't have an association that's not actually going to provide us with legal coverage. We need an association that's going to actually help us. And in the midst of the pandemic, where I really don't have money for this, I'm like, let me do this. So I did it, and I did it secretly, and I didn't tell my husband for like a couple of weeks until we were about to have our first board meeting, and that caused a big strain in my marriage. But the IAH needed to exist. There was no safe space for registered dental hygienists in this field. And if you are going to take into account what recently happened in New York, there's still no safe space for registered dental hygienists. And it's something that we've been actively working towards. I'm so happy that we have a lawyer retained. That was one of my biggest things. I wanted to do accreditation, but to be honest, we don't need a regulatory body. I think that just will cause more issues. Myo in itself is not whole enough as a modality to be impactful, which is why you need other modalities, which is why I do energy work, which is why I do cranial nerves, which is why I do like posture and breath work and whatever, and primitive reflexes, because Myo as its own is not enough for anything. So why do we need a regulatory body for something that can't even sustain itself to the point where you need breath work? Like, if nothing else, everybody's on the Buteyko train. I don't know. But that's probably not the road that we'll go down as an organization. I like the idea of having a lawyer behind us who is going to fight for us to have the right to do this independent of hygiene and without it being in our scope. So the IAH came about in my career now. And it was me putting my money and investing my time into the things that I truly believed in. Because there's a lot of people that'll tell you they're about stuff, but then they do nothing. Remember, this field is a grand celebration of mediocrity, where there's a bunch of people who talk a lot of talk, but if they don't walk the walk, there's no accountability for it. It's just like, oh, we get it. They're busy. No, I'm busy. I do it. I get it done, right? We just get it done. In the middle of the pandemic, I decided, wouldn't it be nice if I moved to Florida? Because I was taking a class by Michelle Chatham at that time, her Myo Wild Academy, and it was absolutely fabulous. I was getting into all of the biohacking things. So photobiomodulation and grounding and all the different ways that nutrition and so forth impacts. And I just wasn't going to be able to sustain the lifestyle that I was living in New Jersey during the summer, being able to get out in the morning for sunrise and sunset and get exposed to natural red light with sunbathing and so forth. I wasn't able to do that year round. It was a really great summer, and housing prices were going up, then my bank account was going down and the mile spot was not doing great. And it's looking like I might have to go back to hygiene. We probably don't want to do that, right? Let's move to Florida. Let's move to Florida. We sell our house at a great profit. Come down to Florida. It's gonna be amazing, right? Wrong answer. Okay, Florida turned out to be amazing for a lot of different things, but to have lived in the Fort Lauderdale area for the first few months while we were with family, while we were looking for a house, I'll tell you that there's no greater accumulation of wealth than there is in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and West Palm Beach. And there's no greater airway gap of providers than there is in this area. It is an uphill battle dealing with the people down here and just bringing forward the awareness. The MyoSpot is doing phenomenal because in that little gap, there are other people out here. Heidi, I love Heidi, absolutely obsessed with her. I've had the blessing of being around a lot of Kathy Winslow is another one who's not here, but like anytime I think about the mentors of the people I've had the ability to be around, I'm super blessed in this field to have that kind of exposure. But having Heidi down here and her educating and me educating and us being able to kind of go around and do the things and network. And I've learned so much and I've been around the most amazing people. Being in South Florida, I would have never gotten, as close to Elijah as I did to start working with Driven and to, he got me out of a hole. I'm like, I don't want to do hygiene. I just want to do Myo. And he said, well, come do RA with me at my company and, you'll grow. And I did. And I grew so much working with him. Love Elijah very much. One of my dear friends, and I really, really value him. Lois Laney, absolutely fabulous. I've been able to grow as a result of working and doing Team Myo or working with Airway Health Solutions or working with Nearman Practice Management. I've been able to grow as such a person. I've also invested, you don't want to know how much I had to spend to be in this room with the phenomenal woman, Liz J. Simpson, but being able to grow and to move in the ways that I was able to move has really set my career off in a different path. I will tell you that myofunctional therapy can be super duper profitable and it can be absolutely wonderful, but your life as a entrepreneur is always going to look like this. It's going to be super high and super low. Summers are typically super low. This summer was high, crazy busy, and everybody I've talked to has said that it's been crazy busy for them. But now it's looking like it's about to hit a lull as school has started back down here. It's like starting to hit its lull, and I'm like, oh gosh, let me brace myself for this like month of having to dip into the savings and so forth. So it's always going to be this journey, and you don't have to do speaking. You don't have to do anything other than Myo, to be honest, and it'll still look like this. It will very much be an up and down battle. But even though my story is going to be unique to me, it's the story of everybody, a lot of us. So we've all had those moments where you get into it, you get really excited. Myofunctional therapy is the answer to everything. I'm going to fix the world. It's going to be amazing. And then you find out it's not all that glitters is gold because you just jumped into it. You're supposed to take your time before getting into it. You shouldn't invest in a class just because other people said this is a class to invest in. You should do your research and take your time and do your homework and really like invest. And because we don't have a good feel for what that is or what that looks like, I'm really excited to kind of announce here and give you guys the opportunity to be some of the first to fill it out. Let me get this banner going. That way I can put it here. It's somewhere. There we go. This survey is going to be something that you can really put out there what you've been through. Now, I do want to say because the disclaimer is not there on the site as of yet with the form, that it is not something where your information is going to be shared. We're going to compile data. So I don't know if you guys have seen the ADHA in the past has always done like a state of hygiene sort of survey where you can put in what state you live in, how much money you make, whatever, how easy is it to look for a job, how many jobs are available, how long have you been in your job and so forth like that. And then they compile all all that data and they publish a report so that you can see what the state of the hygiene field looks like today. Are most people finding it's easy to get a job, or are they finding that it's difficult? Are most people making more than they anticipated or more than, they have in the past? Are people getting raises? Like, there's this annual report that gives you that. I think we need one for OMT. We absolutely need one. This is something that was the brainchild of Shirley Gutkowski. And in working with Shirley G, I kind of put together this thing. The IAH is going to be behind it and be behind publishing all this data. But it does collect email addresses, so I only want you to fill it out one time. Don't fill it out any more than once, but share your journey of where you are with Airway, where you are with Myo. Have your expectations been met? Where's the field going in your opinion? Are there improvements that need to be made? This is the information, this is the data that I think the field really needs, because the more I talk to people, we're pricing introductory courses just based on what we think they should be priced, because I don't know, maybe we don't have any idea if this is the right price for the value. I don't think anybody's ever asked these questions. We just assume that Myo's special, or we should be able to charge $3,000 for a course, because how else are you going to learn Myo? There's only a couple of places to learn it. Well, that's not true anymore. Now there's dozens of places. There's like 12 different introductory courses. You have options. If anything, that should bring the number down to maybe a more competitive level to make it where you should be getting the most bang for your buck. But I think this information is really going to help bridge the future, lead us into where we are supposed to be, where it's how can we get our best start as registered dental hygienists, where we are not behind other profession doing what was originated in this profession. So as registered dental hygienists, we should own this, because we really are, in my opinion, the very best at administrating it. And we can't administrate it if we don't have the information and the data behind what's going on and who's out there struggling, who took a course or who had to take 3 or 4 courses before they truly understood what was going on. And if we have that problem and it's a commonality, isn't it something we should fix as a field? And I hope it leads us towards a better future. So I'm going to leave this survey link here for you. I am going to check the comments really quick, see if there are any questions, because I don't see any. So I wish you a very great day. I've got to go see patients because, work never stops. And I hope you have the best day. Adios.